Today, we're visiting a bus stop that's just downright scary. In June 2025, the Metro bus in Washington, D.C. implemented their Better Bus program. This meant new routes, new route names, and the closure of more than 500 bus stops to speed up travel. While some very popular stops were closed in the city, the stops we're going to today remained open, even if I have no idea why.
Hey everybody, welcome to a brand new video. I'm Tom. I am in the beautiful city of Washington, D.C., my home. Specifically, I'm standing by a bus stop right in front of the White House. The White House is right there. Crazy stuff happening in there. Today, I'm headed to Virginia. But before I tell you where I'm going and how, I want to talk about bus stops.
See, bus stops come in lots of different shapes and sizes. Sometimes it's just a sign alongside of the road. Sometimes the sign has a bench, and sometimes there's even a shelter. Some bus lines have large built-out stations, and in those cases, you usually hope that the frequency matches the size of the stations.
You know, as far as bus stops go, this one is about as basic as it gets, you'd think. There's a pole with the sign. It does have the advantage of dedicated bus lanes, but believe it or not, today I'm going to a bus stop that is more basic than this. I'm riding the F19, which is a rush hour only commuter bus service from DC that goes to Mount Vernon, George Washington's old home. Kind of appropriate that there's a direct bus from the White House to Mount Vernon, even if George Washington never lived in the White House. You know, it's still kind of cool.
The F19 actually doesn't start right in front of the White House, but a little bit farther south at the intersections of C and 19th Streets Northwest. After briefly running on H Street to serve the White House and Lafayette Square, it again turns, this time heading south on 14th Street, making a few additional stops to pick up, I assume, primarily federal workers based on where the stops are. Then uses 14th Street to cross the Potomac River into Virginia, driving on to the George Washington Memorial Parkway, a highway that brings it straight into Alexandria without making any stops. Because it runs for such a long stretch without stopping, it is considered an express bus and charges an express fare. So instead of the regular $2.25, it costs $4.80 to ride this bus. Now I have some thoughts about this, but I'll share them later in the video. Before June 2025, when all bus routes received new names and some of them received new routes, the F19 was called the 11Y. And it's actually pretty interesting because it's one of the only bus routes in DC that shut down during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, but then was brought back to life due to popular demand. I counted 27 people boarding our bus before we left Washington, D.C. I think it's important to note that this was the 4 o'clock departure from Washington, D.C., so it's not quite rush hour yet. I understand why it's a popular service. Although it runs parallel to the Metro, it uses a route that's more to the east, so it serves parts of Alexandria's Old Town that are a little bit more difficult to access by Metro. And of course, in Fairfax County, which is where Mount Vernon is located, this service goes farther south than the Metro does. If you value a one-seat ride, I can imagine that the $4.80 is the price you're willing to pay. As we drive past the Potomac Yard Metro Station, the newest station to open in the entire system, the bus begins to slow down. And here we come across one of the major problems of this service: bad traffic. The George Washington Memorial Parkway is notorious for traffic already, helped in no small part by the fact that when it runs through Old Town Alexandria, it's not a highway anymore, but it just turns into Alexandria's Washington Street. Now, obviously, I'm a huge opponent of highways going through dense urban areas, but I also recognize how bad and inconvenient it is when a highway which is built for cars going fast and not stopping turns into a city street with pedestrians, cyclists, and traffic lights at every block. It's exactly what's happening here. Traffic is getting so backed up in preparation for the city street section of the parkway that it's affecting the part that's supposed to travel fast. It was almost an hour from the moment we got on the bus at the White House just to get out of Old Town Alexandria. Once you do leave Alexandria and travel into Fairfax County, the George Washington Memorial Parkway becomes a highway again, with one difference compared to the section before. It has bus stops alongside of it. These next 5 bus stops, I think, are some of the worst in the entire DMV. That's DC, Maryland, Virginia, for those of you who aren't familiar with the local term. In fact, I was super surprised when I found out they even existed, and even more surprised when I found out that they survived the June 2025 bus change. After all, they cut 500 bus stops across the region, but not these. Spending some time looking at maps, I decided that North Down Road was probably the worst out of the 5, so I requested a stop here, thinking it would be pretty bad, but honestly, I had no idea what was waiting for me. Welcome to the George Washington Memorial Parkway and North Down Road bus stop in Fairfax County, Virginia.
Well, that bus ride was kind of awful. It took an hour and 10 minutes. We were crawling almost the entire way. It's really outrageous to charge an express fare for such a slow bus. Also goes to show that having a highway turn into a city street to then become a highway again is not effective and not great for commuting. So the bus driver actually almost missed my stop. He slammed on the brakes and he stopped kind of over there by that yellow sign, but by this red sign, this is where the North Down bus stop is. So yeah, that's the GW Parkway, and there are 5 stops along it south of Alexandria in Fairfax County that are literally just in the ditch. There's some grass, there's a little bit of a cutout for the bus, and then as soon as you leave the stop on either end, it's a very narrow, grassy area you could walk right next to high-speed traffic. And if you're thinking, oh, but there must be a street behind you, no, there is not. There is forest behind me, basically. I mean, I'm walking through ivy right now, back on the grass. So there are houses up there, but to get there, you would have to walk alongside the parkway until you reach one of the intersecting streets, which are few and far between. So it's winter, so it's getting dark really fast. I've been here for about 5 minutes. Now I'm gonna try the incredibly daunting task of getting to the nearest street and the nearest exit, walking alongside the highway in the dark. And that was the first bus of the day. So they start around 4 and then they run every 20 minutes for about 2 hours. So in the winter, if you're commuting this way, you have to do this.
I was the only person to get off at the North Down Road stop on this bus, but I did see a few people get off at some of the stops right before this one.
Okay, so the ditch here is a little bit wider than I expected. Oh, a lot wider, which is good. It is a little squishy and a bit of an uphill climb. Forget about accessibility, but I feel like that was pretty obvious already. Should be a little bit more and then I'll reach the street. Now here is the street that hopefully I can take to get out of here. I hope I did not walk the wrong way. I don't think I can go that way. I think the grass ends.
Here I am. I've walked a few minutes to get back to the bus stop. Going north clearly was not an option because it brought me to a highway on-ramp that was completely inaccessible to pedestrians. So now my only hope is to walk south to the street that crosses the highway there. It's about a similar distance from the bus stop, but as I'm about to find out, the walk is quite a bit more difficult.
So we're back at the stop. Now this part is really treacherous because you probably can't tell, but that just drops down. So you're stuck with this really narrow, oh, that's just water down there. You can't really tell, but there's a creek down there, which is why you have to walk across that strip, which we're doing now. Now there's a sign, but we can walk around that, which is good. Oh, but this part. Oh, this is nasty.
So here the grass elevates into kind of like a grassy cliff almost, but there's absolutely zero space between the grassy mound and the travel lane.
Okay, so I don't get scared very easily, but I am very highly focused right now because I'm way up on a ledge. It's the only place to walk because the road goes right up to the ledge, but it's just mud and leaves and branches. And if I slip, okay, I did not slip. Oh, I almost slipped. Okay, I need to take a break for a second because the amount of junk on this hill is like, I have to be completely focused. I was losing focus a little bit. This stop isn't like just for able-bodied people. This is for able-bodied people that do not mind risking their lives. I hope you all know I'm not exaggerating. And you're like, Tom, why don't you do this during daylight, like in the summer? And I'm like, well, the whole point of this is to show how it's not feasible for commuters, and I think the darkness is part of that, but I may have to reconsider and just wait for the next bus, which would suck because I'm so close. Okay, update. So there was some loose dirt and I fell, but luckily not too far, but now there's a ledge and we're gonna take it. All right, so I made it to the nearest street that I could access, which of course wasn't even a crossing. It was elevated above the parkway, so had to do some more climbing. I think these shoes are done for. And that is just getting off the bus. The bus is going into the city in the morning. They stop on the other side and there are no crosswalks anywhere. There are not even traffic lights anywhere. How are you ever supposed to get to that bus stop on the other side in the morning?
So I spent some more time looking at the map, and for this specific stop at North Down Road, there is a safer way to do it. You can use the bridge that goes over the highway and then take the parallel road. You still have to navigate your way through some pretty thick shrubbery, but at least you don't have to cross a highway. But for the other stops in this area, if you're going northbound, I really don't see any alternative other than to cross the road.
So I just ran to the nearest bus stop that I can actually use to get back home, which is here, and the bus should be here in 1 minute, hence the running. And then we'll debrief at the metro station. Sound good? Okay, so I've taken the bus to Huntington. I was the only person on the bus. Now we're gonna take the metro back into DC. What an experience. I don't think I've ever advocated for the closure of a stop or a station before, but this probably should be closed. I just don't know who it serves. And I totally understand that you don't want to build out like a huge station for a bus that only runs in the afternoon. But Fairfax County, WMATA, is safety too much to ask? Is it too much to ask to not have to do some extreme parkour and rock climbing just to get away from a bus stop? Food for thought. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to Trains Are Awesome. We've got more content like this coming your way, and you don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.